Now across live to our reporter Slindelo Masikane, who's tracking the water crisis in Johannesburg. Sli, thank you so much for joining us. So we know parts of Gauteng receiving water after that electricity shortage. So where you are now, what's the situation?
Good morning. Yes, well, we find ourselves here in the city of Johannesburg. We've just been taking a look at where some of those affected areas have been and where the water has been restored. And in most parts, that certainly is the case. But the issue around water and water supply here in the city of Johannesburg in particular remains a huge issue for residents, because every now and again residents are finding themselves without water, having to rely on water tankers, and the issues in the main, we understand, is aging infrastructure as well as demand. We find ourselves here in South Hills, and this is actually one of several areas that earlier this month was also affected by an issue around water and around the aging infrastructure at the water tower, where they had to rely for at least 9 days or so on trucks having to deliver water. So my colleague Linged Nambambi is going to show you that in this area actually there is actually a reservoir in the area, and you can see that the state of the reservoir, it's not the best. And just opposite the reservoir as well is a water tower, which is supposed to provide water to the surrounding areas here, and it's also not in the best condition. So what we understand, of course, is that the city and city officials say that most of the issues are outside of their control. However, I think going into local government elections, residents are simply not going to accept that kind of excuse or reasoning, because access to water is certainly a basic human right.
Sli, speaking about the municipal elections, do you get the feeling that the residents are baying for a change?
Certainly so. I mean, I think it's going to be quite interesting, especially here in Johannesburg. The African National Congress and the other parties are really going to have to convince the residents of Johannesburg that they're going to be able to change things, turn things around, because in particular, the city of Johannesburg has been experiencing many challenges around service delivery. Water is just one of them. Electricity remains a major issue, especially in the southern parts of the city, as well as the north, and issues, just basic issues around issues like potholes remain really a thorn in the side for residents. So I think the parties, or the political parties that are vying for that vote from the residents of Johannesburg, are really going to not just promise service delivery, but actually commit to it and actually deliver on the issues around water as well as electricity.
Well, in the past, Sli, and you also mentioned it a few minutes ago, there's been a lot of passing the buck, no one really wanting to take responsibility for the water issues. Is anyone putting their hand up to say, okay, we're going to sort this out?
At this stage, it's just a matter of a blame game, where if it's not the aging infrastructure that's being the reasons for why there isn't water, people will say, organizations like the city, like Joburg Water rather, will say that, look, it's not actually, it's beyond our control. We get our supply from Rand Water, and if they don't supply it, then it does affect how we can supply residents with this basic human right. But at this point, nobody really taking responsibility, just, explanations and reasoning, and expecting residents to just be patient with these organizations in ensuring that water supply is continuous. But every now and again, there are certain parts of the city, or Gauteng rather, that are always affected by lack of water and lack of service delivery.
Sli, having no water in the house is one thing, but there's also schools and hospital. How have they been affected?
Certainly so. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the Rahima Musa Hospital that was severely affected by the water cuts and the non-delivery of water, where we saw Gift of the Givers having to come in to provide some relief and actually drilling a borehole into the hospital. So, of course, it does affect those kinds of services, and areas like hospitals and clinics rely on water to be able to provide a hygienic space. So you will find those going to the hospitals and clinics complaining about just how dirty it is, and how you can't even use the bathrooms in those facilities because of water.
Slee, thank you so much. I suppose the good news for now is that water has been restored in many parts of Gauteng. We appreciate it. Slindelo Masikane is doing the rounds and taking a look at the water crisis that we face at the moment.